We have almost 5 million Americans who've been adopted in the United States since the 1930s, and an even higher percentage of people who don't know their biological fathers. But these individuals aren't just numbers and statistics. They're real-life people. People searching for the missing pieces of their lives. People who are turning to social media for assistance by complete strangers who have volunteered their time and talents to provide them with those answers. We call these strangers search angels. And with the bravery of those searchers and the skills of the angels, they're reuniting families and solving decades-old mysteries. These are their stories. Join us on the journey to discovery. I'm Kathy Williams, and this is Search Angel Chronicles. Mackenzie got some startling news during an argument with her mother last year, when she admitted that the father that had raised Mackenzie wasn't her biological father. Preferring to keep the details to herself, she refused to tell Mackenzie who her father was and left her to take matters into her own hands. When a paternity test with a man Mackenzie's mom had dated around that time proved negative, she turned to AncestryDNA for answers. But instead of answers, it only left her with more questions than when she began. She created a post in a Genealogy DNA Facebook page and asked for help understanding a relationship with her closest match, Lewis. There she met Don Cosmecos, a genetic genealogist and search angel who would do more than just answer a question. She, with the help of fellow angel Tina Wood, would help unravel the mystery of who her biological father was and uncover a few more hidden truths in the process. Mackenzie's with us today to tell us the rest of the story. Mackenzie, thank you for coming today. Will you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I'm 22 years old. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, went to a small high school. I like to weld and I like to watch TV. I'm not sure what else to add.
Okay, that's great. So how old are you when your mom drops this bombshell on you?
I was 20. I was a month from turning 21.
And were you completely surprised, or did you have an inkling that this might be the truth?
I had a little bit of an inkling, but I didn't. I thought she would, tell me I was crazy and that I was wrong.
Yeah. So did you feel like you didn't look like the father that raised you, or yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay. So you identified a man that you thought might have been a possibility. He was a gentleman that your mom dated. Is that right?
correct. They were engaged.
Oh, they were engaged. Okay. And so you reached out to him and asked him if he would take a DNA test.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay. And was he willing? I mean, did he think it might be a possibility?
Oh yeah, yeah. He was saying that he, asked my mom to do a paternity test when I was born, and he kind of let it go and never pursued it further. So
So was that kind of a disappointment when you found out it was negative?
yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm not a genealogist. I didn't know where to go next. So
Right. Right. So you take an ancestry DNA test. That's your next step, right?
yes.
And it's my understanding that you had a close match named Lewis.
Hmm.
And I want to take just a moment and define close match for those that are listening that um, might not be familiar. So DNA is measured in units called centimorgans, just like a gallon of milk or 12 inches in a foot. The more centimorgans that you share with another individual, the more closely related you are to that person. And the way Ancestry sorts other testers who you share DNA with is by the amount of DNA that you share. So my father, my mother, they're at the top of my list. Then my sisters, my grandchildren, and all those cousins follow in below. So as researchers, when we see one of those close matches near the top of the list, we get really excited. And so you begin chatting with Lewis, right? You reach out and you start a conversation with him. So tell us how that goes.
So I reached out, and he said, "Oh, on my end it says that you're my niece and I'm your uncle. Like, is a 99% chance." So we thought, oh, it has to be one of the siblings. So they tested, but when they tested, it didn't line up right.
So he had some brothers. He had two brothers?
He had four. He has four brothers.
Four brothers. Did all of them test?
No, two refused, and two agreed to do it.
Okay. That was really, did you twist their arms, or were they really generous in just wanting to help you find some answers?
Well, I know Lewis tricked one of them, and he ended up being okay anyways. And then the other guy, he wasn't even a possibility, but he's just like, well, heck, I'll test. So I'm like, okay, the more the merrier.
That's great. So they test, and instead of coming back as a father, they share much less DNA than Lewis did, right? So that's
Correct.
when you decide to reach out and ask for some help on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you go in, and that's kind of where Dawn comes in. And Dawn Cosmecos, as I said earlier, she's a genetic genealogist. She does an amazing job working with individuals who are using DNA to identify unknown parentage. And Dawn, will you share with us quickly what brought you into this field of work?
I found out my own unknown father mystery in 2012, I believe it was. I took a DNA test and had my father and my mother test, and my dad didn't match me at all, and so nobody had answers. My mom couldn't remember being with anyone else. My dad had no idea it wasn't him, and so I started dabbling in you know, ways to find the answer. And I happened upon a group called DNA Detectives where
Mm-hmm.
they helped people find their unknown biological parents. And
Right.
I thought, well, I'll try this method and see if it works. And I got hooked. Uh,
It's kind of an addiction,
yeah,
isn't it? When you
yeah,
when you really get into it and enjoy it, and it all starts to fall in place, it's a
yeah.
pretty
It's
cool
fun,
feeling.
fun doing the puzzles.
That's right. That's right. So
Yeah,
I always call it just a
yeah,
puzzle.
yeah.
So you offered to take a look at McKinsey's DNA results,
Right.
and what are some of the first things that you find when you start looking at her matches?
Um, well, of course, she had the close match with Lewis, and his brothers had also tested. And I noticed that, like you said, they shared much less than Lewis. So I knew that that meant something. I knew that he couldn't be the uncle, and the brothers shared a whole relationship lower than him. And so I just, started looking at the other matches that were a little more distant, and I put it all into a what are the odds chart on DNA Painter, and there was no other answer than he had to be her grandfather. There was literally no other answer. Nothing else made sense.
All right.
And so I said, message Lewis and ask him if he has any sons, and he did not.
Yeah. So what's he tell you, Mackenzie? You reach out and you say, "Hey, do you have any sons?"
Yeah. He's like,
You're like,
none that I know of. He's telling us about a little bit of a player back in the day, so I'm sure there's some out there.
so what's going on in your mind at this point, Mackenzie? You know, do you know now Dawn's jumped in to help, and surely you know there are people out there who are willing to help and are getting help with this, but are you, how does that make you feel that now that you think you've kind of honed in on who your grandfather is, but he doesn't even know he has a son? Are you thinking, now what do we do?
Yeah, I kind of like, even though Dawn was there to help me, I did feel a little bit defeated because it's like, holy moly, back at square one. I was hoping he'd be like, oh yeah, I had a son, and of course he didn't. And of course, I am still feeling a little bit angry because all of this could have been avoided, but you know, it all worked out in the end. So,
Right, right.
Were you feeling
So
I was
Dawn,
wrong? Oh, sorry.
no, please.
I was just wondering if you ever thought at that point that I might have been wrong, because I felt like, what if I'm wrong? But, you know,
no. The
he,
only part
I'm
where I was thinking if you were wrong is at the end result. I'm like, oh no, what if there's an adopted brother out there? But I knew
right,
you were
right.
right about Lewis.
Mm.
Okay. So, Dawn, do you want to talk a little bit about you eventually had her test at 23andMe? Is that the next
Yeah.
step, or am I getting ahead of?
Well, so I said, he doesn't know who the son is, so we need to find. There's this woman out there that he clearly had a relationship with that um, is your grandmother, and your DNA is going to point us to that. And so I started looking at the matches on the other side. There's another cluster, and it really got us nowhere. It was, there were maybe some second, third cousin matches, which are usually great matches, but none of them had trees. One had a tree, a good tree, and then the rest just nothing added up. And I said, look, we can dig deeper. We can figure this out. But before we spend all the time, why don't you test at 23andMe and upload to MyHeritage just in case you get some better matches and we don't have to spend all this time digging in the ancestry matches. And and she agreed. So we did that. And MyHeritage, again, didn't have really much for quick solving. And then,
Right, right.
and then
Let's
she,
insert here real quick about MyHeritage. So MyHeritage is a testing site. You can buy a DNA kit from them and test directly on their platform. But one of the wonderful things that they do is allow us to upload raw DNA from either Ancestry or 23andMe into their platform
mm-hmm,
without a charge. And they match with the people who have tested and shared there as well. So it gives us kind of
mm-hmm,
another um, pool to
avenue.
fish in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, another group of matches, and sometimes it's some of the same people, but you just never know when the right
Right.
match is going to be there. So we always
Right.
encourage people to do that. And I had another question about when you were talking about 23andMe. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask is you were saying that she didn't have a lot of matches that were incredibly helpful. Does she have a unique ethnicity at
No,
all, or was it just a matter of just not having the right matches?
it was just a matter of not having the right matches. They didn't have trees, or they had very sparse trees, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm not afraid to dig in there and build those out and find the answer, but
Right.
let's test on the other sites first so that maybe we get the answers quicker, which is what
Right.
happened. Yeah.
Okay. And so you're looking at the matches on 23andMe. They don't have the same tools that Ancestry have.
Right.
Have a few unique ones that make it a little bit easier in some respects and some more difficult in others. So, what are you
Right.
doing with the matches there? What are you seeing?
So she had like three, I want to say three pretty decent she had one on Ancestry, but again, we couldn't match it up to anything. And then she had two or three on 23andMe that were pretty decent matches. One was um, like a half uncle type range, 500 and something centimorgans. I don't remember exactly. And there was a couple others that might have been second cousins. And they, 3 out of 4 had very common names, like Joe Smith. I mean, it was like,
Right.
uh, and so again, I felt a little defeated, but that's when I pulled Tina in and I said, we could figure this out. We need to be creative here. And we noticed that one of the matches had a surname, I believe it was McCullough, that was also in the tree of the one match on Ancestry that had a tree. And I said, let's just take a leap of faith. McCullough's our line, and let's build down this person's great grandparents and all their descendants, and let's find these matches in the
Right.
tree.
So you bring Tina in. I want to introduce Tina Wood. Tina's a search angel and a genealogist, and I always describe Tina to people as this unique. She has such a unique way of pulling data out of places most of us wouldn't even think to look. She's just
She's
incredible at mining that information and thinking outside of the box, and she brings so much to the table, and she's incredibly humble, and she would say none of that is true, but we know differently.
Yep.
And so, Tina, thank you for coming today, and
My
tell us
pleasure.
just a little bit, how did you get into doing this?
Well, every state has different laws around whether an adoptee can get their original birth certificate. And I live in Rhode Island, and the law in Rhode Island changed in 2012 to finally allow it. And a friend of mine who was adopted, got hers on the very first day it was possible, and she heard I did genealogy research and said, "Listen, I have a name from my mother finally, and I can trace her back on Ancestry, but I can't figure out, how to find out what happened to her. And if you could possibly help, I would be so grateful." And I'll never forget what she said. She said, "At age 68, I'm running out of time." And I'm like, "Whoa, okay." And I dropped everything, and it took me a while to figure out how to do it, but I finally did it and found her living family. And I love to tell the story that one of her half brothers was my ex's cousin's ex, because Rhode Island. So
Right.
so I got started doing it then, and I've learned a lot over the years, and I've worked with wonderful people like Dawn and in the wonderful group search squad with you and all the others. So
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? And I mean,
wonderful.
and that so much of it's the team
Hmm.
effort. So I want to ask you guys, Dawn, you can answer, or Tina, either one. So you know that you've got this grandfather who has a son he doesn't know about. Does it cross your mind that the father might have also been, or might have been adopted rather
Mhm.
than raised by his mother?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that makes it makes it tough. And so, are you sharing that information with Mackenzie, telling her
Mhm.
that's a possibility? We might not find this guy, or
Yep.
are you kind of
Yep.
keeping her up to speed and all of it? Some of us, we have different techniques. Some of us like to bring the searcher in for the entire process, and I kind of like wait to the end because we can sure go all over the place and the highs and the lows, and
Mhm.
so
I
and
think
the
she
theories.
was in the whole way, the whole play by play, right, Mackenzie? You were
Yes,
part of the chat with
adventure.
us.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Dawn started
Yep.
a group chat so Mackenzie could be in on it, and that was fine.
Yep.
So
Yep. And
Good,
we'd send her
good.
back with questions for Lewis. Ask Lewis if he knows someone in this area.
Now, did Lewis live in the same general area that you did, Mackenzie? Or
No,
was
Lewis lives in
or
a
was he in a
whole
different
another state.
whole nother state? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So where do y'all go from here? Tina, Dawn, what are your
Well,
what's your theory?
we built down. I said, let's just build down these Let's build down this tree, and let's see if we could find these matches. And rather than build the matches to find the common ancestor, we decided this is the common ancestor that we're assuming or hoping for, and we took a leap of faith and built down, and every line, every child, every grandchild, and I think we found three of the four matches in the
hmm
tree, and the one that was the possible half uncle. I can't remember the other relationships that he possibly was, half uncle and
well, he turned out to
and
be a
uh,
half great uncle, right?
half great uncle.
Yeah.
Correct. So, oh, that's right. Not half uncle.
Well,
I'm
it
sorry.
looked like half
Uh,
uncle, but the DNA, it could be either one, and it turned out to be half great uncle.
right.
Right.
Half great uncle. So we look, well, at the time we didn't know that. We look at him and we look at the possibilities and his age, and it said, and we thought, a half great uncle. Does he have a half sibling? And sure enough, he had a half sibling. Nancy.
Nancy.
And I think Tina found that Nancy had several sons.
Yes. Yeah, she had four
Yeah,
Yeah.
sons.
And
and
how are you finding that information? Because sometimes it's easier, not sometimes, all the times, it's easier to find past records. It can be easier to find records for somebody that died 50 years ago than to somebody who's living today.
mhm,
So
I,
what did you do? You remember what you did to try to find those sons?
yeah, I got on that track because I found I was building down my part of the tree. Basically, Dawn and I said, "Okay, I'll take this sibling that we're building down, and you take this one, and we'll get there." And so then when I was building down to get all the descendants, I found an obituary, and it listed the two daughters that she had, and I had to find them. They were in Florida, and I found Facebook pages for them finally because I was trying to figure out even uh, what their original last names were because the obituary, the woman had been married a few times, and then I found a Facebook page for one of them, and I'm like, okay, oh, I see this woman. She was in the tree. I can't remember at that point where because I was kind of really focused very, very intently on finding these. And I said, but here's this Facebook page. This woman's in the tree, and Dawn looked at the Facebook page and said, oh, that's so and so, and that was what really busted it open, was finding the obituary to get the daughters of this woman, and then looking and finding their Facebook pages, which led to this other Facebook page, which was really honing in. So, what do you want to do
Mm-hmm.
next, Dawn?
I think somewhere around there we figured out that one of her sons was born before her her current husband and her were married, and he was clearly the father of all of her sons, as far as as far as on record. But this one son was born before they were married, and we were like, as CC Moore would say, aha. Uh, we were like, okay, let's look at this guy. And we
Mm-hmm.
just started looking at him, and the resemblance was uncanny and all of that. And so I said, okay, before we say for sure, let's look at his mother's father's side. Let's build that out and make sure that that matches up to the DNA.
Which we had to
Um,
find her surname first because,
yeah,
yeah, that took a little
yeah,
bit of digging, but once we got that, you're like, yeah, that's the name in the DNA.
yeah. That's the name on
Right.
in that side. It was like third and fourth cousin matches on Ancestry, which we didn't go back that
Uh,
far the first time. So once we had the
mm-hmm.
name, it was really easy to go. Okay, it does match
Right.
up. So
And it's difficult sometimes. Sometimes that can be some of the hardest things is just finding a female's maiden name,
Hmm.
especially if she's been married multiple times.
right,
And if her parents are still living, there's no obituaries to find.
right.
Tina, I can only imagine you've got some tricks in your bag about how you how you try to find that.
Well, I always say every state has different records available, and Indiana happens to have some really good
Yeah.
ones available. So we got really lucky on that.
Oh, good.
That's actually how we
Right.
figured out, like, to confirm that the eventual birth father, that we knew that, because I wasn't sure if, just from looking at Facebook and other databases, is this her son or is it her husband's son from a previous marriage? But we
Mm-hmm.
found
Mm.
his marriage record in Indiana, and it listed who his mother was. So it's like, okay, then we know this. And it
And
Right.
no
well,
father,
no,
right?
it said
Wasn't.
that his stepfather was his father,
Oh,
but
okay.
we knew that wasn't true because
Right.
of when they got
Mm-hmm.
married, or probably wasn't true.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Right. So you are honing in, you find this mother and you think it's a possibility that this one son that was born before her current marriage might be might be the best candidate,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
no.
Remember, she lived in the area that Mackenzie
Hmm.
was born, and she was from the area that that Lewis was
Yes.
from. That was another clue for us.
Yeah.
So you kind of stitched those little facts
Yeah,
Hmm.
together.
right.
Yeah. So do you reach out to Lewis and ask him, do you remember this woman, or do you not go there? Mackenzie, do you remember?
Yeah, they sent me a picture. I'm not sure which one. Who they were like, ask Lewis if they remember this lady, and so I texted Lewis, and at that time he was asleep because he goes to bed at 10 p.m. every night on the dot. But he texted me in the morning. He goes, I don't remember her at all. But then again, he was like, also it was like 40 years ago, so I could. So
Right. Okay. So, what do you all recommend? Dawn, do you recommend that she reaches out? What kind of advice are you
Yeah.
giving her?
We had, and normally I wouldn't say this, but he was nearby. He owned a business that was a, publicly open business. I said, go in there, check him out. Don't put him on the spot or anything, but check him out. See if see if you're comfortable around him, if he's friendly, and then maybe leave a letter with him. And that's exactly what she did. She just went in and, well, I'll let her tell that part.
Yeah, tell us about that.
I want to first shout out Dawn. Thank you for basically writing the letter and helping me make it sound professional, but not too professional. So yeah, I put it in a manila envelope to make sure, and then I put his name on it to make sure that, it would go to him when I walk in. Oh, and I included some pictures of my mother as well, just in case, it wasn't a relationship and if you don't remember her name. So I walk in and I was like, hello, are you Phil? And he goes, yes, ma'am, how can I help you? I'm like, oh, I just have this letter for you, and then walked out. So nervous.
So how long does it take him? He must respond back to you at some point.
Yeah, it was
How long
about,
does it take him to respond?
it was a couple hours. I would say it was like 7 or 8 o'clock that night, and I handed him the letter. Oh shoot, I'm not between 1 and 2 p.m. I didn't want to go in super early, so if he did read it right then, it would be on his mind all day. But I was scared to go in too late because what if he left early? Because he's the owner, he can do what he wants, and I would have missed him. So kind of went kind of in the middle. So, but I was every time my phone went off, I was picking it up really fast to see if it was him, and it never was
Right.
until late that night.
So let me ask you this. So a lot of times when we find a birth father, we find out that he's married and he was married to the same woman at the time that, the person we're helping was conceived. And we know that we need to be really careful in contact because that can go south really quickly. And and it's a time where it's a really hard. You got to make some really hard decisions. Do I reach out? Do I possibly ruin a marriage? Or is it important that I know who I am? All these things that we put on ourselves to try to make those decisions. But you've got a really unique situation because you're not only asking this man, is it possible you're my father? You know that he may not know who his father is. You don't know whether he's aware.
Mhm.
I mean, he may be walking in exactly the same shoes that you are. And so, do you take that into consideration? How do you in your mind get past that to the point where you're like, I need to know, I need to send this letter?
Yeah, I was like, I was just personally just ready to be like, I want to know, I want to know, I want to know. And then Dawn, thankfully, was like, okay, let's just bombard him with one thing at a time, one, big piece of information. Um, and I was like, I'm not going to say anything right away. And then sure enough, the next day he calls me because, he's trying to get to know me. He's telling me things about my mom, things I would want to know, like, oh, what was she like, and then just general questions about him as well. And then he was like, well, I understand your position because I didn't know who my dad was, and I wanted to know, but I gave up because I didn't know what to do. I wasn't getting answers, and I was like, well, actually, I got to think you brought it up. And then that's when I kind of told him. He goes, oh, wow. And then that's when he was telling me about kind of like his story. So
That's awesome. So it is a lot. It is a lot to be bombarded with. Oh, I have a daughter, and now I have a daughter, and I know who my biological father is. All in, a 24-hour period is a lot to digest for anyone. And
Mhm.
so he played it really safe and wanted a paternity test right first before y'all went any further. I think that's
mhm.
really smart before because he's got a lot riding on this. So do you do a paternity test?
Yes, we met up. We got Mexican food, and we did a DNA test all on the same day. I got to hang out with him in his
Oh,
store. It's so much fun.
and you just got results back just in the last day or two, right?
Yeah,
And what did they say?
99.999%.
Awesome. That is so great. Tina and Dawn, you guys did such a great job. I
Good
mean,
teamwork.
sometimes you just go on a really good hunch and that's the best you've got. And especially
Mhm.
on something like this because he could have easily been placed for
Hmm.
adoption.
Mhm.
And I'm so happy that it worked out for you. Um, so let's see. I have I have notes, but I got lost in the story.
What about
So
Lewis? How's Lewis
yeah,
taking all
what's
this?
right. So Lewis now knows he's got a son he didn't know he had. Speaking of bombarded, did he? Do you know why he DNA tested in the first place?
Yes. So I guess it must run in the family. His dad was also, um, I believe it was where he was married, but his dad had some kids out there. Well, they thought there was possibly kids out there, if I'm telling it correctly. So Lewis is like, well, I want to know, and you're not going to put your DNA in the system. So I want to find my siblings. I want any family I got out there. I want to know who it is, and um, I think he found two. One wasn't really opening to talk, and then one was. And I actually got to meet his half sister's son. We communicated with him on Facebook. He's really nice. So that's why he tested
That's
in the
good.
beginning.
Okay. So were some of these um, siblings or half siblings some of the matches that you all were finding, Dawn, in the
I
DNA
don't
matches?
I don't remember there being matches that we didn't know how they were related to him. Maybe we just didn't pay attention to them because he was such a good match and had his brother's
Right. There
tests. So we
wasn't
might
a
not
lot
have.
of need to go back.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember having mystery matches that we couldn't figure out at the top,
Right.
but we might have
So do
ignored
they
them.
have plans to meet Lewis and your biological dad?
I do. Okay, Lewis is really excited. I can just tell. Him and his wife are kind of doing their own research when his name, what's he look like, and is he nice, and blah blah blah. And then Phil is kind of on the fence about it, in my opinion. He's kind of like, oh, I get it. I don't want to get too attached, and it turns out it's not him, because what is the, possibility of it being wrong, or, but also he's asking me questions about him, like if I have any siblings, what does he look like, you know, is he nice or is he mean, stuff like that. So I think he's interested, but he's
Right.
just playing it cool.
Yeah. So do you think there'll be plans to have a big reunion? You all are no, one of them lives in a different state now. Is that right?
One state
Is it
away?
Lewis that live?
So I live in Indiana and my biological father lives in Indiana. But basically his biological dad's family, they're all in Pennsylvania, except for basically his half sister who's in North Carolina. So I know I'm gonna go out to Pennsylvania and meet them. So I
That's
don't know if
exciting.
he's wanting to do that or not, but he's more than welcome to come with me. So
Yeah. So do you talk to your mom finally? Do you talk to her and let her know that you've found the right guy?
she knows. Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
she
she's
knows
happy.
that you found him and she's yeah. Okay. Well, so typically I ask my guests, what advice would you give to somebody that's walking in your shoes? But I'm going to switch this up a little bit and ask you, what advice would you give to a mother that's out there listening right now
Hmm.
who may have a child that she hasn't told the truth to yet? And she's on the fence about what to do maybe. What advice would you give her?
That's a big question.
I'm sorry.
I guess I guess I would start with saying whatever happened between you and whether you know who the man is or he's a mystery man, it could have hurt your heart back then. It could have, caused you a lot of pain, and that's terrible. And I'm sorry, but it's gonna cause your child a lot more pain by not knowing who it is by, or you telling them and then not telling them who it is, and it just in all honesty, 99% of the time, the child does not care what happened between you and bio dad. That's your, like, that's why I said, I was like, that's your business. I don't care how I got here. I just want to know who it is that helped get me here. So it's,
Right.
she's writing the story and she wasn't letting me, put my own ending, have my own chapter in it. So wouldn't even let me read the book per se. So just
Right.
tell them who it is, please.
Yeah. Right.
Can I
You know,
insert something? Sorry, Kathy.
absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say something Mackenzie texted to us when after she met her birth father was that it was the best day of her life, if that says anything. She had such a good
Yeah,
day with him.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what I was going to say is too, if we're talking to that mom out there who might be trying to make that hard decision, as an adopted person like myself, I knew my whole life that I wasn't my adopted parents' child. And when I went to the doctor, I wrote adopted across that history, And so then as I began to age, they ran lots of tests for all kinds of things because I just had no history. And so the opposite of that is when you believe someone to be your father that's really not. You're in the doctor's office writing down that person's history.
Mhm.
And that's not your history. That's not you know, your makeup. And so you might be doing heart testing when you need to be, looking at colon cancer or something like that. And so
Mhm.
it's something just that basic that you give to your child by allowing them to know who their biological parents are. You're giving them health history that could be incredibly impactful.
Mhm.
And,
Um,
and to build on that, I have a rare genetic
Absolutely.
disorder. And so, again, my mom said that she had got health history from, whoever this mystery man was, the guy that she believed it to be. So she was also giving the doctors wrong health information. So I feel like it's also very important, like, let your child make decisions if they want to reach out to them, but at least you're gonna be like, I'll just give you health and correction or health information. Make sure it's correct health information. That's all I gotta
Right.
say.
Right. Yeah. That's absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely true. So, one question that I ask every guest is I believe that knowledge is power. And a lot of times through this journey, what we get at the end of the road, sometimes we don't get a beautiful relationship. And sometimes we don't get the answers we necessarily wanted, but we get the knowledge. So,
Mhm.
how has the knowledge of who you are biologically empowered you? It's all kind of new yet. You're kind of letting it all soak in, but has it, do you feel like it's empowered you in some way?
Yeah, it empowered me in like many different ways. Like, I know to some people it may not seem like a big deal, and but it is. I feel like I'm not replacing my current dad by any means. I love him. Nobody will ever replace him. He was always there for me. But it kind of empowers me because I feel like I'm also like giving bio dad a chance because he never got the chance to, see me grow up, see me, go to my school dances and stuff like that. And I also just feel like knowing where I got my nose from, my lips, my dark hair, because everybody else is blonde. Like, for lack of a better, I'm just gonna call him my stepdad just for this, but I call him dad. But my stepdad, he's got like lighter brown hair and stuff like that. But when he was younger, it was blonde. So I'm like, something doesn't add up. I have way too dark features, so it is kind of cool getting to see everything kind of pieced together and be like, oh wow, we have the same nose, we have the same lips, we got the same chubby cheeks. So
Mhm.
I love that. It was just like seeing you know, that last final puzzle piece getting put in the puzzle.
Right. Well, I know that someone said this recently, and I forget who, that identifying your biological parent isn't the end of the story; it's actually the
Mhm.
beginning. And I think that is incredibly true. And I think, especially, at your young age, that you all have a beautiful life ahead of you to have two fathers in your life that love you and to be able to gain knowledge from both is an incredible gift. And I hope that your mom in time will learn that it is a gift that she gave you. And that while she put you through a little bit of, turmoil getting there, I hope that she'll realize that the end process is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, are there any questions that I didn't ask that you felt like I should have, or that something you wanted to talk about that I completely missed? Anybody?
Can I just say one thing, just
Sure.
in case my mom and dad do watch this? I just want to say I love you, and I wasn't doing this to hurt anybody. I just want to know where I came from. And Dad, I'm not replacing you. I just see it as more family, not a new family. So I love you all, and I'm not doing it to hurt you.
Thank you for saying that. Now I've got to get some tissues in here because y'all keep making me cry. Okay.
Don't
Well,
cry.
I appreciate I appreciate so much you all being here today, Mackenzie, for your bravery in telling your story. Because it did take bravery. It took bravery to step out and just begin your search,
Mhm.
and I just applaud you for that.
Mhm.
And Tina and Dawn, she couldn't have landed with two better researchers, human beings
Oh,
who I know walked her through this process. And I just appreciate, everything that you all do. And
Thank you.
there's a statistic that someone threw out several years ago that somewhere between 10 and 30% of U.S. citizens, excluding adoptees, don't know who their biological father is. And I remember the moment I heard that, and I had a hard time wrapping my head around that. But people like Mackenzie are finding out every day that life as they knew it may not be reality. And my hope is that those people who have yet to get all the answers they're searching for are able to find amazing folks like Dawn and like Tina, search angels who not only know how to dig and find the answers, but also know how to help you through the process. Whether it's crafting a letter or patiently waiting beside you for confirmation from a DNA test, they're there to help. And if you've got questions that you'd like to ask, and you can put them in the comments below or email me at searchangelchronicles@gmail.com. Join us next time on our journey to discovery. I'm Kathy Williams, and this is Search Angel Chronicles. I was so impressed with Mackenzie's bravery and determination to get the answers that she felt she deserved. It's tough finding out that the father that raised you, the one you've loved and looked up to your entire life, isn't your biological father. It can make you question a lot of things about who you really are and what truths lie ahead of you. I thought Mackenzie handled her situation with more maturity and grace than most young ladies her age have. I loved what she said, that by having her mother withhold the truth from her, that she was writing her story instead of allowing Mackenzie to have the ending that she deserved. I'm so thankful that with Dawn and Tina's help, that Mackenzie can begin to write the next few chapters of her life. I completely trust that her heart is big enough to include more family, because we never trade one family for another. We just learn that we can never have too many people that love us. If you're enjoying these stories, I hope you'll hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any new episodes. If you've got a story that you'd like to share, or if you've got a question for a search angel, please email me at searchangelchronicles@gmail.com. I hope you'll join us next week on another journey to discovery.